Welcome to Cultura Latina. This week we're having a taste of the legacy of Argentina's most important rock musician. And also we're visiting Peru's most famous political cartoonist. Join us. Carlos El Indio Solari is one of Argentina's most important rock musicians that started his career in one of Argentina's most influential bands. Here's a taste on how his art went beyond his music. Come see.
Carlos El Indio Solari is perhaps Argentina's most important rock musician of all time. He was the frontman of Los Redonditos de Ricota, Spanish for Little Ricota Circles, one of Argentina's most influential bands, before becoming a rock music legend in his own right as a solo artist. From early on in his career, his art has gone well beyond music.
His upbringing may very well have led him to be a great literary critic, a very good student of literature, a novelist. Therefore, it is interesting seeing everything on display here, his love of cartoons, masks, drawings of what could be the hint of an artist, where with him all the arts come together, with one that in the end, one finally triumphed over the others, which is a lyrical and tight style of rock, which suddenly bursts with mottos that seem like great political mottos, without actually being that.
Very much an unknown figure beyond the borders of Argentina, within the country he has a massive following. He cannot play at any venue in the city of Buenos Aires because of the huge crowds he draws at every one of his concerts, which his fans refer to as rituals or mass. They are usually held in small provincial towns with large open-air venues that can cater for the over 200,000 people that attend.
I'm not talking about a government in particular. At the moment, he is sympathetic to the current government, but that is not the issue so much as the fact that the suspicion his followers have that there's elements not only to rethink poetry and the existence of each one of us, but also a fairer political world. That suspicion is confirmable, and that suspicion is not always easily confirmable with an artist. He has provoked skepticism and flirts with that skepticism and knows that his followers, which number the thousands in Argentina, confirm each time that mystical act of assembly takes place, that it is possible to transform the injustices of a country and the world.
The National Library of Argentina in Buenos Aires has opened an exhibition called Indio at the Library, which displays memorabilia spanning the over 4 decades of Indio Solari's career. Also on display are his very diverse objects of art. The National Library's director, Horacio Gonzalez, says that what must be emphasized in the way Indio Solari has influenced Argentine popular culture is through his political views.
Indio Solari is completely different to everyone else because, for example, you have the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, the world's biggest bands. But they never generate what Indio generates. Why? Because Indio went beyond the bounds of music. It is a cultural movement, being a ricotero, fan of the band Indio Solari famously fronted, is cultural. It's not just being a fan of a band, it's a lifestyle.
His fans outline Indio Solari's radical autonomism. Not only has he always been a vocal critic of the commercial music industry, he has never signed with a music label. This alone, they say, was the most important political message.
When we say he didn't come to a settlement, we mean that he did not negotiate with corporations or any of the multinationals. He never gave in to a cultural or political orientation. The line was the one he followed, and we learned from that. It was great. It was a huge movement, a huge change, especially in the 1990s, when Argentina was a very oppressed nation, with neoliberalism in full swing. Everyone engaged in full-on consumption, and the guy went in his own way.
Carlin is the most prominent cartoonist in Peru, recognizable for the spread of his work in social media and the strong political message within his pencil. Take a look.
Carlos Tovar, who is best known as Carlin, is the most prominent cartoonist of Peru. His political cartoons are one, if not the most recognizable feature of La República newspaper, as they often go viral on social media.
I was drawing before I began walking. I was drawing while sitting on the floor or kneeling. Sometimes my mother would write letters to my grandma, and on the bottom she would leave me a space. And as tribute to my grandma, I would draw cockroaches in a line. I thought it was the most natural thing in the world. When I was in school, I had a thing for looking at the political cartoons of newspapers. My father was a militant in the Communist Party from a young age. I remember that they would talk about politics at home, so I must suppose that this influenced me as well.
Critics describe Carlin as having an outstanding ability to synthesize political events with a remarkable humor that highlights the absurdity of social, political, and economic conjunctures.
I don't have a formula to come up with an idea for a cartoon. Sometimes it happens like I told you, that watching Keiko Fujimori making statements, my wife would tell me, listen to what she's saying, it is contradictory. And based on that, I would draw a cartoon for the following day. It's gratifying to see that a cartoon gets many comments on the newspaper's website. It is very rewarding for me to sometimes see that in a demonstration or rally, people carry large signs with my cartoons on them. And in this way, I feel that my objective is being achieved through my work. Contrary to what may be believed, cartoons don't always give people ideas, but rather that people appropriate the cartoons because they consider them to express what they believe. I believe that graphic humor, the image, is always closer to the people. It is more accessible. I think this is an advantage that cartoons have, which is that they can synthesize things in one scene, sometimes with few words or with no words at all. And they are also easier to understand than a political or an editorial comment. Humor is a type of comment on things that tends to generate laughter because of the absurdity. What it does is to make the absurd evident. When something is already absurd, we make it even more absurd. Humor always makes you think, and sometimes it makes you laugh.
In addition to his artistic work, Carlin has also written 4 books and makes presentations and workshops in conferences to promote a reduction of the hours of a workday as a solution to the cycles of economic crisis of capitalism.
Fortunately, in architecture, I had sociology, development economics, and philosophy courses. I had a vast education. Then I started thinking about the idea of writing a book on what Marx would say in those days, the 90s, confronted with the fall of the Soviet Union and what he would say about his initial proposals. And I wrote that book and called it The Old Guy Speaks. Towards the end of the book, the one who talks to me, who is supposed to be the ghost of Karl Marx, proposes a solution to the world crisis, the reduction of the working day to 4 hours. And that is the proposal that I keep working on today. I just published a book called Socialism in 4 Hours, where I try to be more explicit about the issue of the 4 hours a day, and this idea is becoming more and more known. The logic of the 4 hours is that if the advancements of technology permits that with every hour I'm able to produce more, this multiplication of my productivity should be translated into working less hours. And that everyone works less hours because, if we don't do it, we are a part of humanity, which is condemned to unemployment. The idea is to establish a law that limits the working week, and in that manner, if you want to earn more, you won't work more hours, but you would make an effort to improve your productivity, the quality of your work, the technology that you use, your education. That is what needs to happen.
Thanks for watching. Next week we'll be back with another taste of the amazing Latin American culture. See you then.